There is a peculiar power in walking alone, in moving through the world untouched by the noise of others. People will question you, they will whisper, they will demand to know why you choose solitude over their crowded rooms, their hollow validations. Let them wonder. You see, the greatest minds, the fiercest souls, they were never understood in their time. They walked paths others feared to tread, and when the world asked, "Why do you stand apart?" they simply smiled, because the answer was never for the crowd to hear. Solitude is not loneliness, it is the silence where creation begins, the space between footsteps where destiny is written. So walk, walk until their voices fade, walk until the only sound left is your own truth. The world is full of noise, but the most profound truths are found in silence. A dimly lit room, the flicker of a dying candle, the slow creak of a door left ajar. These are the spaces where real thinking happens. Most people fear the dark because they fear what they might hear. When the distractions fade, but you understand that shadows aren't empty. They're full of answers most are too impatient to wait for. Walk into a place where the light barely reaches, and you'll notice something strange. Your senses sharpen. The hum of distant traffic becomes a rhythm. Rustle of leaves turns into a whisper. This is where clarity lies, not in the bright, noisy centers of the world, but in its forgotten corners, the ones most hurry past without a second glance. Great decisions aren't made under spotlights. They're made in the quiet, in the half-seen, in moments when no one is watching. That's why the most powerful people in history often preferred the edges of the room. They knew visibility is overrated. Mystery is control. Think of how a single match struck in a vast, dark hall commands more attention than a floodlit stage. That's the power of restraint. That's the power of saying less, showing less, letting others strain to see what you already know. The best stories aren't told, they're implied. A glance held a second too long, a letter left unfinished, a door left slightly open. These are the things that linger in the mind long after the obvious has faded. Most people crave resolution. They need every question answered, every mystery solved. But the ones who move differently, they leave gaps on purpose, because they know curiosity is a stronger leash than certainty. Ever notice how the greatest films, the ones that stick with you, often end on an unanswered question? The best endings aren't endings at all. They're doorways, and the ones who matter will walk through. Silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's a language. The more comfortable you become with it, the more others will lean in, trying to decipher what you're not saying. The next time you enter a room, try this. Say less than necessary. Watch how the air changes. Watch how people start inventing stories about you. That's when you'll understand. Mystery isn't something you lose. It's something you earn. The world will always rush to explain itself. The real power lies in being the one thing it can't. A single image can carry more weight than 1,000 speeches. Think of a lone tree standing in a field after a fire. The bark is scorched, the branches bare, but it's still there. That's a story without words. That's a lesson in resilience that no motivational rant could ever match. The best visuals don't just show, they suggest. A pair of shoes left at the edge of a pier, a chessboard with only 2 pieces left, an unmade bed with 1 indentation still deep in the pillow. These aren't just shots, they're questions, and questions linger far longer than answers. Most people consume content like fast food, quick, forgettable, designed to be replaced, but the ones who leave a mark, they use imagery like a slow poison. It doesn't hit you immediately, it sinks in over time. Consider this. A clock ticking in an empty room is just a clock. But a clock stopped at 3:07 in an empty room, that's a story. The difference is in the details. The difference is in what's left unexplained. The human brain is wired to solve puzzles. Give it something obvious and it moves on. Give it something unresolved and it can't let go. That's why the most iconic scenes in film aren't the explosions or the dramatic speeches. They're the quiet moments right after. A hand hovering over a phone, then pulling away. A suitcase packed but left by the door. A toast raised to an empty chair. These are the images that haunt. These are the ones that refuse to leave. Most creators think more is better. More action, more color, more noise. But the ones who understand, They know subtraction is the real art, cutting away until only the essential remains. Ever notice how the best photographs often have empty space? That's not a mistake. That's where the viewer's mind fills in the gaps. That's where the real magic happens. The next time you want to make an impact, don't add, take away. Strip it down to the bone. Let the silence between the frames do the talking. The world is drowning in flashy, disposable content. Be the thing that stays. Most people are afraid of dead air. They rush to fill it with chatter, with noise, with anything to avoid the weight of silence. But the ones who know better, they use it like a weapon. Think of the last time someone held your gaze just a second too long. That slight stretch of silence where you wondered, what are they thinking? That's the moment where real communication happens, not in the words but in the space between them. The best speakers aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who know when to stop, when to let a thought hang in the air like smoke, when to let the audience come to them. Ever watched a skilled negotiator at work? They never rush. They let the other person squirm in the silence, desperate to fill it, often revealing more than they meant to. That's not just strategy, that's human nature. Music isn't about the notes, it's about the rests. Moments where the sound drops out and you're left with nothing but anticipation. That's what makes the next note hit harder. Most conversations are just volleys of noise, back and forth with no real meaning, but the ones that matter, they have rhythm, they breathe. They understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Watch a courtroom drama. The best lawyers never barrage the witness. They ask their question, then they wait and wait and wait some more. The pressure of that silence does more than any cross-examination ever could. The next time you speak, try this: finish your sentence, then count to 3 in your head. Watch how the room shifts. Watch how people lean in. That's the power of patience. Great storytelling isn't about constant stimulation. It's about tension and release. It's about knowing when to tighten the rope and when to let it go. Slack. The world is screaming for attention. The real power lies in knowing when to whisper. Words on a screen aren't just information. They're architecture. They shape how a thought lands, how it lingers, how it digs its way into memory. Most people throw text up like graffiti. Quick, messy, forgettable, but the ones who understand, they treat every word like a stone in a cathedral. Think of the difference between reading a tweet and reading a carved epitaph. One is consumed, the other is experienced. That's the power of intentionality. That's the power of treating language as something sacred. The best text overlays don't just repeat what's being said, they punctuate, they elevate, they create a second layer of meaning that works in tandem with the visuals and the voice, like a well-timed chord in a symphony. Most creators use text as a crutch, explaining what's already obvious, but the masters, they use it as a counterpoint, sometimes agreeing with the audio, sometimes contradicting it, always deepening it. Ever noticed how a single word in bold white font against a black screen can feel like a punch to the gut? That's not an accident. That's design. That's understanding the weight of isolation. The human eye is drawn to contrast, to the unexpected, to the moment when everything else falls away and all that's left is one line, one idea, hanging in the void. That's when comprehension becomes feeling. Most subtitles are functional. They exist to translate, but the best on-screen text transforms. It's not just about what's said. It's about how the letters themselves look, how they move, how they disappear. Think of film titles. The ones that stay with you aren't the flashy ones. They're the ones that appear almost reluctantly, like they're sharing a secret they're not sure they should tell. The next time you add text to a video, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Does it need to be shown? Does it need to be felt? If it doesn't do all three, it's just clutter. The world is drowning in words. Be the one that sinks like a stone. The most intimate form of communication isn't a conversation. It's a confession. It's one voice in the dark, speaking directly to the part of you that rarely gets to speak back. Most content is built like a stage playper. Formers, audience, separation. But the real magic happens when that fourth wall crumbles. Think of the difference between being told a story and overhearing one, between being lectured and being let in on a secret. That's the power of direct address. That's the power of making the viewer feel chosen. Most narrators stand between the audience and the content. They explain. They guide, they mediate, but the truth needs no interpreter. It just is, and when delivered right, it lands with the weight of something undisputed. Ever noticed how the most viral videos often feel like they're speaking just to you? Not to a crowd, not to demographics, not to algorithms, to you. That's not an accident, that's the illusion of intimacy carefully constructed. Great teachers don't stand at podiums, they sit across from you, they lower their voice, they create the sense that this is for your ears only. That's how ideas bypass resistance and take root. Most video content is built like a megaphone, but the stuff that lasts. It's built like a whisper, like something that would disappear if too many people heard it. That's the paradox. The more exclusive it feels, the more universally it resonates. Watch any cult leader, any revolutionary, any icon. They never say all. They say you, singular, direct, unavoidable. That's how movements start. That's how minds change. The next time you create, imagine one person on the other side. Not a crowd, not a fan base. One set of eyes, one mind, one beating heart. Speak to them like you're the only two people left in. The world is full of broadcasts. Be the thing that feels like a tapped phone line. Authenticity isn't about being raw. It's about being irreducible, about stripping away everything that isn't necessary until all that's left is the thing that can't be ignored. Solitude as strength. Walking alone isn't loneliness, it's defiance. It's the quiet rejection of a world that demands constant validation. The ones who move in silence don't do so out of fear. They do it because they know the crowd is a distraction from what really matters. Mystery as control when you stop explaining yourself. You take back power. Let them whisper. Let them invent stories about you. The less you say, the more they'll strain to understand. And in that gap, you'll find freedom. The art of unanswered questions life isn't a multiple choice test. The most compelling people don't hand out answers. They leave trails. They let others chase shadows, knowing curiosity is a far stronger motivator than certainty. Silence speaks louder. The world is addicted to noise, to hot takes, to empty words. But real influence lies in what you don't say, in the pause before the answer, in the glance that lingers just a second too long. Visuals over verbal clutter, a single image can haunt a mind forever. A lone chair in an empty room, a half-finished letter, a door left ajar. These aren't just shots. They're psychological hooks. Use them wisely. The weight of pauses most people fear dead air. But the ones who command attention, they wield silence like a blade. They know the space between words is where real thinking happens. Text as a weapon on screen. Words shouldn't just inform, they should unsettle. A single phrase in bold type against a black screen can hit harder than a monologue. Less is almost always more. Direct address as hypnosis. When you speak to the individual, not the crowd, you bypass resistance. The greatest teachers, leaders, and storytellers don't lecture, they confide. Subtraction over saturation. The modern world drowns in flashy excess. But timeless impact comes from stripping things down to their essence. Cut until it hurts, then cut again. The allure of the unfinished great stories don't tie up neatly. They end on a question, a glance, a door closing just out of view. That's how you stick in someone's mind, by leaving them wanting. Patience and strategy. Rushing ruins everything. Let people lean in, let them wait, let them wonder. The longer the tension builds, the harder the payoff lands. Being the exception in an era of oversharing, privacy is power. In a time of constant chatter, silence is a superpower. In a world of open books, the locked diary, the illusion of intimacy make each viewer feel chosen. Like this message was meant for them alone. That's how ideas spread, not through shouting, but through secrets. Walking away as victory. Most people crave the center stage. But the real players, they're already gone before. The crowd realizes the show's over. Let them wonder. This is the ultimate power move. Move through life, leaving just enough mystery to keep them guessing. Because the moment they think they've figured you out, you've already changed the game.